Before there were 50 states, before there was a flag with stars and stripes, there was an idea that a free people could govern themselves and build a nation from nothing but grit, faith, and courage. That idea was born on the 4th of July, 1776, and it changed the world forever.
The 4th of July marks the birth of the United States of America. It is the day Americans set aside every year to remember where they came from and to celebrate what it means to be free. It honors the moment when 13 determined colonies, scattered along the eastern coast of North America, declared their independence from the British Empire. These colonies were small, far apart, and filled with people from different backgrounds, but they were united in one bold belief that liberty was worth fighting for. At the time, America was a land of promise but also of unrest. Farmers, blacksmiths, shopkeepers, and sailors lived under British law. They paid British taxes and were ruled by a distant king they had never seen. Their lives were shaped by decisions made thousands of miles away, in a country that didn't listen to their voices. Year after year, Parliament passed new laws that tightened its grip. The colonies were taxed without representation. Their goods were controlled, their trade restricted, their liberties eroded. British soldiers could be quartered in colonial homes without permission. Protesters were silenced. Dissent was labeled treason, but the American spirit would not be crushed. These were men and women of the frontier, strong, independent, and stubbornly free. They believed in God, in hard work, and in the right to live without tyranny. They didn't want war. They wanted respect. They wanted to be heard. When peaceful petitions were ignored, when their loyalty was answered with force, they began to rise. They organized town meetings. They wrote letters and spread ideas through printed pamphlets. They gathered in secret, in candlelit rooms and country churches, to speak freely about the path forward. Out of this growing unrest came voices of leadership. Men like Samuel Adams, who stirred the spirit of rebellion. Patrick Henry, who thundered, "Give me liberty or give me death." Benjamin Franklin, the diplomat and thinker who helped bridge old ideas with new possibilities. And George Washington, the quiet, determined Virginian who would one day carry the weight of a nation on his shoulders. By 1775, the first shots of the American Revolution had been fired at Lexington and Concord. What started as protest had turned to armed conflict. Farmers picked up muskets. Blacksmiths became soldiers. Families watched their sons march off to fight for something larger than themselves. Yet even as war raged, the colonies had not declared themselves a separate nation. They fought to defend their rights, not yet to create a new country. That would change in 1776. In Philadelphia, delegates from the 13 colonies gathered in the Second Continental Congress. After months of debate, they came to one conclusion. They would break away from Britain, not as rebels, but as free men founding a new nation. They tasked Thomas Jefferson, a young and gifted writer from Virginia, with crafting the words that would define this moment. Working in quiet rooms with only a pen, parchment, and the weight of history on his shoulders, Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. He wrote that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He wrote that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed, and that when a government becomes destructive of these ends, the people have a right to alter or abolish it. These words were not just a statement, they were a revolution. They declared that the rights of man came from God, not kings. That freedom was not a gift from government, but a birthright. On July 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress voted to adopt the Declaration. The colonies were no longer British. They were the United States of America. The men who signed their names did so knowing it could cost them everything. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. Some lost their homes, some lost their lives. But none regretted their stand for liberty. The war would continue for years. It would be fought in valleys and forests, on frozen fields and muddy roads. The American soldiers were often hungry, poorly clothed, and outmatched. Yet they endured. At Valley Forge, they suffered bitter cold, but trained with discipline and purpose. At Saratoga, they turned the tide. And at Yorktown, with help from France and the grit of their own courage, they won. When the British laid down their arms, a new nation stood. Not yet perfect, not yet fully formed, but free. And every year since, Americans have honored that beginning. They've marked the 4th of July not as a day off, but as a sacred reminder of what was fought for and what was won. From small towns to big cities, the spirit of Independence Day fills the air with pride and joy. Parades roll down main streets, flags wave from porches and storefronts, church choirs sing hymns of thanks, families gather in backyards to share food, stories, and laughter. And when the sun goes down, the skies come alive. Fireworks burst above fields and rooftops, lighting up the night in red, white, and blue. Each crack, each boom, each shimmering spark tells the story of a nation that chose freedom and held on to it. But the 4th of July isn't just about remembering the past. It's about honoring the present and protecting the future. It's about teaching our children where their freedom comes from. It's about looking back with gratitude and forward with resolve. Because freedom, once won, must always be defended. It must be guarded not just with weapons, but with wisdom. It's not just with strength, but with unity. Not just by soldiers, but by every citizen who votes, who speaks, who stands for what is right. The ideals of 1776 are not frozen in time. They live on in courtrooms and classrooms, in city halls and on factory floors, in the hearts of every man and woman who still believes that liberty matters, that character counts, and that the American spirit is alive and well. This country has been tested again and again through civil war and world wars, through economic crashes and national tragedies, but each time the flag still waves, the people still rise, the dream still endures. On the 4th of July, we remember those who gave everything for that dream. From the colonial farmers who stood at Lexington, to the soldiers who stormed Normandy, to the first responders who ran toward danger on 9/11, and the men and women who've stood guard in faraway lands ever since. They fought not for conquest, but for country. It's not for gold, but for the red, white, and blue. The flag they carried means something. It stands for more than territory. It stands for an idea. That no matter where you come from, you can become something here. That in this nation, dreams are still worth chasing. America is not perfect. No country is. But it is free. It is strong. And it is still the shining city on a hill that so many have looked to for hope. Every 4th of July, that light burns a little brighter. Every backyard barbecue, and every child holding a flag, every family standing for the anthem. That light lives on in our soldiers, and in our school teachers, in our farmers and firefighters, in our nurses, truckers, welders, and pastors. In every hardworking American who keeps this country running. It shines in the factories of Detroit and the cornfields of Iowa, in the small towns of Texas and the harbors of Maine, from Alaska's mountains to Florida's shores. It shines, the spirit of independence, the spirit of America, is not locked in a history book. It's alive, and it's proud, and it's worth celebrating. So fly the flag high, tell the story again. Teach your kids what this day means. Tell them that freedom isn't free. It was bought with sacrifice and guarded with duty. Tell them about the men who signed the Declaration, knowing it could mean death. Tell them about the troops who marched barefoot in snow, who crossed rivers in darkness, who stood firm under cannon fire. Tell them about the veterans who came home with scars, some seen, some not. And tell them that freedom is theirs now, to cherish, to live, and to defend. Because that's the American way. We don't run from history. We honor it. We don't tear down the past. We learn from it. We don't apologize for loving our country. We stand for it. The 4th of July is more than a celebration. It's a recommitment. It's a promise we make again each year. To keep the faith, to keep the flag flying, and to keep America the land of the free. Not just for us, but for our children and for theirs. From the first bell rung in Philadelphia to the last firework lit tonight, it's all part of the same story. The American story. A story of courage, hope, and freedom. So let the music play. Let the crowds cheer. Let the stars and stripes wave strong. Because this is Independence Day. And in the heart of every American, it still means everything.